Hi, it's Lisa, and here I have a video regarding Project 2, the Powerful Schools Project, and this is a post-mortem on that project. Now, I didn't expect that you would, at that point, know how to normalize or even how to do table relationships, so most people got full credit if they made, their best effort. Still, as we're about to go into normalization and eventually the midterm, I want to show you some of the common mistakes that were made way back in Project 2. Again, mistakes that you didn't lose points for these, but they're mistakes that you'll want to reconsider now that you know a little bit more, now that you know about table relationships and now that you're studying normalization. So first I'm going to show you a couple of typical mistakes that people made, and I have a couple of items here that you should watch out for. So in normalization we talk about eliminating repeating groups of fields, but there are also, you want to watch out for repeating groups of tables. And I have an example here. So some people, when they did the design for the Powerful Schools, again, this was before they had any knowledge of database concepts, they came up with two different tables, the Monday table and the Wednesday table. And this is understandable because if you go look at that Powerful Schools document, page 3 was the Monday classes and page 4 were the Wednesday classes. So it makes sense when you look at the report, but it doesn't make sense logically in terms of identifying entities and making sure that you normalize and eliminate repeating data. So here's what to watch out for. If you have a table like the Monday table and then you have another table, the Wednesday table, and they have the same fields. So notice they both have a class name, they both have a day, time, tuition, student limit, instructor, and grade range. If they have the exact same fields, that tells you that maybe those things could be combined. So instead of having a Monday table and a Wednesday table, if you abstract up, all the Monday classes and all the Wednesday classes are really just all classes. So maybe a better table would just be the classes table. So again, watch out and eliminate repeating groups of tables. So watch out for those, the tables that are structurally the same as another table. Another common problem, and this is again not something I expected you to know, but fields should be atomic. So for example, here in the instructor field, we have both the first name and the last name in that field. And so that should be broken up into first instructor first name and then another field for instructor last name. You could argue the same thing here for time. You really have both start time and end time all in the same field. You could also make that argument for the grade range as well. So you might have, the minimum grade and the maximum grade in terms of that range. The third item is use best practices for primary keys. So another common problem that I saw was that people were using a field for the primary key like a name field, in this case class name. So you'll want to reread the best practices for primary keys, and you'll see it in the book, but it's also summarized in the appendix of our textbook. But in general, primary keys should be small and numeric. These are text-based primary keys, and primary keys are going to be used for searching when you're doing queries. And when you have to search a character field, it's much more time consuming than a small numeric field. So just a field that is class ID with 1, 2, 3, some sort of auto number is an ideal design. There are a couple of other issues that came up that I didn't mention here, and one of those is just make sure you cover all of the fields in a particular document. So I've got most of the fields here, but one thing I'm missing is the class description. There's no field that has that long paragraph description for each class, and so that was a common field that was missing. Well, let me move over to the next tab in which I have an improved design. Now this isn't the end-all design, but this is a design that's approaching more of a normalized structure and a structure ready for you to analyze table relationships. So you can see here I have a classes table, and it has each class just one time. And of course I've got that class description field that was missing. I'm using a small numeric primary key. You can see class ID 1, 2, 3. I've separated out instructors over here in a separate table with those details. So I have the instructor ID, again, a small numeric ID for that. Instructor last name and first name are separated out, so that's atomic. And then the other thing that I'm doing is I'm separating out all the schedule information. So if I try to put the Monday, the start time, the start date, etc., those kinds of things here in the classes table, the problem is I end up repeating the name and the description. So you want to think about that when you're thinking about normalization this week. So if I had, I might have a sewing class this quarter on Monday, and then I might have another one on a Wednesday. And then the next quarter I might have another one on a Monday and another one on the Wednesday. So every time I schedule sewing, I don't want to have to write down sewing, the long description, etc. So instead, in the classes table, I have those attributes that generally do not change over time. So those go in the classes table. And in the class schedule table, I have those details that do change over time, right? What day of the week we offer sewing might change over time. The start time might change over time, etc. And then in this class schedule table, when I refer to sewing, instead of having to repeat its full name and the full description, I just refer to sewing by its ID. And here's sewing right here. So here's the ID for sewing. Same thing with instructor. Instead of having, every time I teach a class, instead of having to write out the entire instructor's name and their contact information, which is multiple fields, so this instructor is number 1, when I refer to that, or when I assign that instructor to a particular instance of a class, I just use their ID. So you'll notice that you'll have these tables that are, really just where you show each class one time and the unchanging attributes of that class. And here's another one for instructor. Each instructor one time with the unchanging attributes. And then you'll have these more junction-like tables where you see the interaction or the assignment between, say, classes and instructor and other items. And in those cases, when you refer to these other tables in a separate table, you're referring to them by their ID. And of course, that's where they become foreign keys. All right, that's it for this post-mortem.